Cuentero Productions and Two Lines Press present Husband in a Box. Hakono Otto.
Are the loquats ripe?
My husband asked at the breakfast table. My mother-in-law ate most of them. She always let us have the first one, though, to share. It was sort of a ritual to mark the beginning of summer.
Not yet,
she said.
Not until after the rainy season.
My husband looked out at the garden.
You don't really like loquats anyway,
she added.
If you want some, you can have Yasuko buy them at the supermarket.
She looked over at me. I nodded and said, "Of course."
Nah, no need,
he said, reaching for a newspaper clipping. I quickly got up to wipe off the kitchen table and clear away the breakfast dishes. We had a fig tree, too. I don't understand why, but I've heard people say that loquat and fig trees bring bad luck, so you must not have them in your garden. I once asked my mother-in-law if she had planted the trees on purpose.
Well, I guess someone must have,
she replied.
Or maybe they just grew on their own.
Either way, she didn't seem to care. She never pruned or even mentioned them, but she was always happy to eat the fruit when it was ripe. The figs were large and very sweet. The loquats had such big seeds they were hardly worth the trouble. I could see the loquat tree from the kitchen window. It looked weak and spindly, considering how old it was. The branches with fruit on them were kind of creepy, covered with white fuzz. Some tree disease, maybe. The fig tree was on the western side, by my mother-in-law's room, so I hardly ever saw it. But every time I went out to weed the garden, I was startled at how overgrown the branches were. There was something ferocious about the way they covered the entire western garden, 4 yards wide, and even seemed to be reaching over the fence into the neighbor's yard. I thought it might be better to prune them, but never actually said so. It wasn't a serious problem, and besides, the garden was my mother-in-law's territory.
Yasuko! Yasuko! Come here!
She shrieked. Wiping my hands on my apron, I rushed into the living room. She was leaning out into the corridor, jabbing one finger toward the yard. A yellow stray cat I'd seen before was on the veranda again, small for a tom, with a timid little face.
Hayaku! Quick! Chase it away!
My mother-in-law screamed. She loathes cats. My husband once got into a fight with one and was badly hurt, she said. So, maybe that's where it started. But how could my mild-mannered husband, who hardly ever spoke, do battle with a cat? Just thinking about it made me laugh. The cat peered into the room, meowed once, then lifted his tail and sprayed the screen door. I opened it and shooed him away. He slowly dropped down onto the grass, then turned back to look at me.
Shh! Go on! Get out!
I said sternly, intentionally raising my voice. Finally, I threw a stone at him, and he ran off.
How did that happen?
My mother-in-law demanded to know.
Where did he get in? I put up a net, you know?
Her chest was heaving. She seemed genuinely terrified. A cat could have easily jumped over that bamboo fence, I said, even with a net over it.
Then we'll have to find a dome-shaped one, big enough to cover the whole house.
She replied, perfectly serious. Yes, it'll have to be really huge, I said. Actually, it would only need to cover my husband. My mother-in-law certainly wasn't going to be devoured by a cat. I got a rag to wipe the screen door, then went back to the kitchen. I heard faint strains of music. Bach seemed to be my husband's favorite composer. He listened to cassette tapes with the sound turned down low. At that volume, you couldn't really hear it, but he never turned it up. Since I liked it too, I made excuses to go into his study whenever he had it on. His study was really the living room, but when we weren't eating or watching TV there, that was where he worked. I usually tried to stay away so as not to disturb him. My mother-in-law had apparently retreated to her room. She used to watch TV there, or, being an early riser, she'd sometimes take a nap. Every morning, she was up at 5, poring over 4 different newspapers, stopping to carefully cut out articles on politics, social issues, the stock market, new products or companies, plus a few human interest stories. My husband read them after breakfast. They were all different sizes, but he nimbly picked each one up with his long, black fingernails. After perusing them, he would turn to his computer in the corner, where he received information from various companies and sent out messages. After I dried the clean teacups and put them away, I got my husband's water ready. He didn't drink tea or ice water, and since he hated the taste of tap water, I bought purified water, especially for him. He had his own little cup, which I filled exactly 80% full. Then, once I'd made sure there were no water droplets clinging to the outside, and that the tray was perfectly dry, I'd take it into him. The weather's so nice today, I said. I'd like to do the laundry, but is it going to rain? The weather forecast was never among the articles my mother-in-law cut out of the newspaper. Yet, even though he didn't watch the weather report on TV either, my husband's predictions were always correct. Peering through his glasses, low down on his nose, his small black eyes surveyed the garden, then looked over at me.
There'll be a shower this evening,
He said. If I hang the clothes out now, they'll be dry by then, I said. He nodded, then took an envelope out of a desk drawer and handed it to me. Inside was one opera ticket.
Oh, the magic flute?
I cried. I'd seen the newspaper ad, which I'd cut out and slipped into his usual pile of clippings. But that had been about 5 months ago, so I'd forgotten all about it. I've been dying to go. You bought me this ticket? I can go, can't I? This ticket's mine? I was so happy I was dancing around, waving the ticket in the air. Then I checked the date. It's tonight! I'm so excited! One of the best seats, too. This feels like a dream. How can I ever thank you? Seeing how thrilled I was, he seemed to be laughing. He opened his mouth so wide I saw red inside. I heard him say something.
We'll go together.
Together? But there's only one ticket.
Doesn't matter.
By that, do you mean you're going with me? He said nothing, which meant I was right. I was so surprised, I could hardly breathe. I had never seen him leave the house, not even once. Are you sure you can go? Does Mother know about this? How will we get there?
We'll leave at 6.
He then turned back to the computer and started punching keys again. This was no time to be doing laundry. What would I wear? We'd have to have dinner early. More than that, how would he come with me? Why had he bought only one ticket? But he was definitely going with me. Just thinking about it made me happy. A real opera with my real husband to see the magic flute. This one opera would be enough to last a lifetime. An opera I'd always dreamed of seeing. I was sure he hadn't bought just the one ticket out of stinginess. He wanted to go with me as one, body and soul. And even if he'd bought 2 tickets, getting there and coming home would still be a problem. When it came to moving, he was very slow. He was apparently much faster if he used his hands. But he couldn't very well scurry along to the concert hall on all 4s. I'd never actually seen him move that way. One day, several months before, I'd gone to the supermarket while my mother-in-law was out at her lesson in no chanting. When I came home, I went around to the garden to pick some shiso leaves for dinner before going inside and saw something moving under the big cherry tree in the southwest corner. At first, I thought it was a large mouse or maybe a small dog. Then it scampered across the garden, up over the veranda, and into the living room. A distance of about 8 yards, but the creature crossed it in no time. It seemed to be jumping above the ground, rather than crawling. I picked up my shopping bag and hurried into the living room to find my husband in his usual position, not the slightest bit out of breath. "Did you see something come in here?" I asked.
No.
He replied, his back turned. I went around to face him. "Are you sure?" I asked suspiciously. He was avoiding looking me in the eye, yet the muscles in his face were quivering. Not in anger, though. He seemed to be trying not to laugh. His shoulders were moving slightly up and down. He then waved me away, so I didn't press the matter, but I am sure it was him. There was so much to do. I'd have to wash at least half the dirty clothes that had piled up during this string of rainy days. I'd pick out something to wear tonight while the washing machine was running. My matching skirt and short-sleeved blouse with the little yellow flowers would go nicely with the new Josette summer coat I hadn't worn yet. I might need a wrap if it was chilly in the concert hall. My husband had bought me the coat online. As usual, I'd slipped the order form into his pile of newspaper clippings. Though he never went out, he could apparently purchase whatever he wanted online. The only things he left for me to buy were his purified water, pet botoru, eggplants, nasu, seasonings, and plastic garbage bags. Chōmyūryō. A big sack of rice was suddenly delivered to our house once, straight from the farm, along with a big metal wash tub, ordered by my husband, apparently, though he hadn't told anyone. He must have overheard my mother-in-law and me talking about how beaten up our old wash tub was. I don't really understand how it works, but it seems he pays for these things by computer, too. While I was hanging out the wash, my mother-in-law came to help. As she was only about 4.5 feet tall, she took charge of the lower pole, while I slung towels and futon covers over the higher one.
It must be convenient being so tall,
She said.
Big people are born for physical labor. Don't have to use their brains, so they have an easy time of it. For generations, they've called us the noble one-foot Weird clan. We've always used our heads rather than our bodies.
Ah, I answered vaguely, wondering what weird could mean.
In families with lots of children,
She went on.
it wasn't the firstborn, but the smallest who was the heir. You could tell at a glance who was the chosen one, the best of the lot. The bigger kids, like me, were given lots of chores from early childhood. I did all kinds of work. I was pushed out because I was too big to inherit, but now I've got my son to care for. Of all the weirds, there hasn't been a final one for 100 years. We'll have to go to Bakinu sometime soon. The last time I was there, he was just a child, so no one knew yet how well he'd turn out.
I wondered where Bakinu could be. I'd heard her mention it before. She talked about going there soon then, too. She looked over at me. Yes, let's, I blurted out, then started to tell her about tonight's opera. We'll be leaving at 6, I said, so I'd like to have dinner an hour earlier than usual. Will that be all right? Opening her eyes wide, she stared at me, then said,
The two of you? Heh. Well, well. An opera. My. And leaving at 6. My, oh my. Oh my.
Her wells, and my oh my's didn't reveal whether she approved or disapproved. They were no help at all. I wished she'd get angry or object, and then help me come up with some kind of plan. In the past few decades, she must have had to take my husband out somewhere at least once or twice. How exactly had she managed it? So, what should I do? After beating one of my husband's shirts to get the wrinkles out, my mother-in-law hung it on the bamboo pole. She shot a glance at me, then turned and went back into the house. I couldn't tell whether or not she was upset. When I'd finished with the laundry, I suddenly remembered it was time for lunch. With all the fuss about the opera, it had completely slipped my mind. Though I wasn't hungry at all, I couldn't very well skip it. After all, it was my job to fix our meals. I boiled some cold somen noodles, then took a kitchen knife and chopped them into little pieces the size of rice grains. My husband couldn't swallow long noodles. I cut tiny squares of cucumber and tomato and mixed them with lettuce. He likes food without seasoning, salad vegetables with no salt or mayonnaise, steak so rare it's practically raw, or fish that actually is raw. In other words, he likes his food untreated, just as it is. For dinner, I boiled some New Zealand spinach in the water left over from the noodles, washed the rice, and made little chicken mince dumplings rolled in sliced almonds, ready to be fried. Then I put them in the refrigerator. While my hands were moving, I worked out a plan. I'd have to take him either in a furoshiki wrapping cloth, a basket, or a box. He'd be awfully cramped in a furoshiki, and a basket would be too bulky to take into the concert hall. There'd be no place for a seat inside it either. A box wrapped in a furoshiki wouldn't attract so much attention, and he'd be able to sit down inside it. He wouldn't be able to stand up or lie down, but everybody sits during operas. No one watches standing up or lying on the floor. Did we have a box that was just the right size? I thought over the various boxes we had in the house. But no. First, I'd have to check to see how big it needed to be. I stopped what I was doing, went into my husband's study, and measured him with my eyes. I thought I was being very quiet, but he noticed and turned around. Seeing I was empty-handed, he became suspicious. I never entered his study except to bring him something. He turned up his nose, pretending to sniff the air. This was his way of asking what I wanted.
We'll be having dinner an hour earlier than usual,
I said with a vague laugh,
because we're going to leave at 6 and need time to get ready.
Hoping this would satisfy him, I quickly judged the length and height I'd need. A sake box wouldn't be wide enough, even one for 2 bottles. He'd be able to fit, but there'd be no room to spare. Then it came to me. What about that honey box? Both my husband and mother-in-law love Chinese milk veg honey. As it's much cheaper if you buy a 9-pound bottle, my mother-in-law ordered one directly from a honey supplier out in the country somewhere. But the bottle it came in was so big and heavy, not even I could pick it up, and so I ended up dragging it around. Did we still have the box? It might be with the burnable trash. I went to look and was relieved to find it there. There were vegetable scraps stuck to it, and I'd started to fold the box so it would burn more quickly. I hadn't in the end, though. The cardboard was so thick I'd gone to get a knife to cut it down, then got distracted and forgot about it. If I wiped off the outside and straightened it out, it would do just fine. It was plenty wide. The only problem was that it wasn't quite tall enough. If my husband sat down inside it, the top of his head would peek out. His hat, maybe. My husband liked hats. He had a fine, soft felt hat, a hunting cap, a beret, a baseball cap, a summer hat with a wide brim, and a wool knit cap with a pom-pom. Could hardly imagine him bareheaded. He even wore a nightcap to bed. Not that he was bald, but he was apparently a little self-conscious about how flat the top of his head was. Besides, hats suited him. Most of his were actually for children to wear when they got dressed up to go to a shrine for the 753 festival. Even so, they were so big on him they covered half his face. His glasses, low down on his nose, sat right below the hat, so it was hard to really see his face. But I could always tell how he was feeling from his subtle movements and gestures. While he was in the box, a rather small hat would be best. His hunting cap? Or the beret, maybe. I didn't care for the beret. It looked too cartoonish. I wanted him to wear his English checkered hunting cap, but if given the choice, he'd probably take the beret. He didn't like the hunting cap. I'd also have to get a smaller box for him to sit on, so he could peek out of the big box during the opera. I was thinking about all these things during lunch and while washing the dishes afterwards, so I didn't even remember eating. I marched mechanically out into the garden to bring in the laundry. My mother-in-law stayed shut up in her room. She usually came out to help, since some of the clean clothes were hers, and she could see the laundry poles from her window. She hadn't said a word at lunch. Her lower lip was pressed into a straight line, moving to one side or quivering only when she ate. She scowled over at me now and then, or intentionally turned away from my husband as she sipped the sauce she dipped her noodles in. She must have been in a bad mood.
You needn't fix dinner for me,
She'd said after lunch.
I'll eat at the usual time. I don't have to hurry, and don't bother making anything for me either. I'll make do on my own.
After she'd left, I said to my husband, maybe it would have been better to buy Mother a ticket, too. He glanced over at me and wiggled an ear. My mother-in-law wasn't interested in classical music. Perhaps it would be better to say she hated it. Her taste in TV programs was completely different from ours, too, so she always watched in her own room. I'd carry the box wrapped in a furoshiki, I thought, as I carelessly folded up the laundry. Did we have a furoshiki that would be big enough? The only one I could think of was green with a clear white scroll work pattern. There was an old russet brown one as well. It was torn in places, with patches clumsily sewn on. I'd never seen my mother-in-law with a needle and thread, so someone else must have patched it. That furoshiki had been in the family for generations. So had several other things in this house. An old brass figurine that might have been a horse, a cow, or a deer. My mother-in-law called it hushizo. Then there was a round foot warmer, and a mallet for pounding straw she called kinuta that looked like the magic one in the old stories that you strike to get whatever you want. I'd screamed once when I opened the box of what looked like dozens of dead baby mice. They were actually tiny foxes, badgers, rabbits, turtles, sparrows, and other animals made of faded crepe, with cotton coming out of the seams, wrinkled and bunched up together so that they looked like a pile of dead mice.
Passed down from our ancestors,
My mother-in-law had said, as though they were nothing special. I never saw her mending them either. I'd brought the furoshiki with the scroll work pattern with me, so the cloth was still new, but it would stand out too much. The brown one wouldn't attract so much attention. I decided not to think about whether the color would clash with my pale blue summer coat. Since we'd be eating by ourselves, dinner didn't have to start at 5. We could have it at 4:30, or even 4 o'clock for that matter. Any time would be fine. We had lots of practicing to do before we went out tonight. For starters, I wasn't sure if the box I'd chosen was really the right size. As soon as I'd finished putting the clean laundry away, I brought the box with my husband's seat inside, plus the furoshiki to my husband's study. "We can have dinner anytime," I said. "There's so much we have to do before we leave."
Right.
He said, just as I thought he would. When I put the box in a corner, he turned around, his nose twitching, and stared at it. This was not a good sign. He didn't like it. But what did he expect me to do? I slipped out to the kitchen to start dinner. While I was slicing tomatoes, I heard a great thud from the living room, along with what sounded like a moan. I ran to the living room and saw that the box had fallen over. My husband had gotten in, then when he tried to get out, it had fallen over, and the flaps of the lid I had folded back had flopped back down again. High-pitched cries came from inside. I opened the lid and my husband crawled out. His fine hair was a mess, standing on end. "How was it?" I asked. "Too cramped? I don't think we have any others we can use,"
Bah.
he said. This wasn't an expression of dissatisfaction, though. It was more like, good grief. After getting back into position in the box with his hat on his head, the beret, just as I'd thought, he asked,
Think you'll be able to carry it? Pretty heavy, isn't it?
He, too, realized there was no other way. "I'll be fine," I replied, looking out the window. It looked like it would start raining any minute, which worried me. It wouldn't be easy carrying this big box with my umbrella up, and my handbag besides. But I wasn't going to let that keep me from seeing the magic flute. I was determined not to give up this chance for happiness. My husband would probably be hearing the opera live for the first time in his life. "I'll be fine," I said once more, and went back to the kitchen. We finished dinner so quickly it was almost scary. We only ate about 5 bites each. Afterward, we practiced with the box. It was heavy. But I'd only have to walk about 55 yards or so to the bus stop, and after we got off at Takamichi, another 200 yards to the concert hall. There's a slope to climb for the bus stop, I was thinking, when I heard my husband say,
Call for a taxi?
It was hard to hear him from inside the box. His voice is normally very soft. He only lets out loud, high-pitched cries in moments of desperation. There was a clump of fish mint growing under the snowbell tree in the garden. The white flowers stood out against the dark green of the leaves. From far away, the plants just looked green, but when you got up close, you saw a deep purple like blood in the leaves and stems. My mother-in-law left the fish mint alone when she weeded the garden, so I followed suit.
Lizard tail plants are so refreshing to look at,
She'd once said. I'd thought she must be talking about the fish mint, but just to be sure, I'd asked her.
Is that what you call them?
She'd mused.
Well, they're probably pretty much the same thing.
So, now I also call them lizard tails, too. Though I've always known about fish mint, lizard tails are new to me, but I figure they must look very much alike. The opera was absolutely wonderful. My husband tapped his foot to the rhythm from inside the box, quietly humming along with Papagino, Papagina, and frequently commenting on how weak the string section was.
The strings are weak. The strings are weak.
This was intended as praise rather than criticism. I could tell because he often said that when he was enthusiastic about a CD he was listening to. He seemed to find going out as interesting as the opera itself. After that first outing, I cut a hole in the box so he could see out, and bought a new furoshiki, thin enough for him to see through. There was a vacant lot on the corner that we had to cut through to get to the main road, no matter where we were going. It was a grassy area, about 790 square yards, marked off by a rope stretched among the 4 poles at the corners, so I had to step over the ropes to cross it. It was also a popular toilet for the neighborhood cats and dogs. At meetings of the neighborhood association, people often complained about what a mess it was and how no one bothered to clean it up. But to my husband, it was a whole new world where he saw azaleas and cattails and dayflowers swaying in the breeze, and where he could watch grasshoppers and frogs jump right in front of him.
Yeah.
He'd call from inside the box, or...
Oh.
When he called my attention to snails or praying mantises with a high-pitched cry, I had to stop right there.
I won't be long,
I'd say when I was ready to go out, and he'd let out a sharp sigh that sounded something like,
Shoo!
It seemed to come out naturally, though I knew it meant
I want to go too.
I couldn't take him on days when I had lots to buy, so I'd pretend I hadn't noticed and leave by myself. He never actually came out and announced that he was going too. I wouldn't have minded taking him for a walk or to the park, but the park was pretty far away, and we couldn't go for walks every day. Even on my bicycle, it was nearly 10 minutes to the Taisei supermarket, which was cheap and had the best selection, so I couldn't very well take the box. There wouldn't be enough room for the shopping bags, and besides, the box would sway back and forth on the bike. I was awfully busy that year. The rainy season dragged on and on, so whenever the sun came out, I was busy doing the laundry or rushing to the grocery store. And there was another reason why I had so much to do. Ever since that opera, my mother-in-law had completely stopped doing the household chores she'd done before. Previously, she'd helped me with the laundry and the cooking, and had always taken charge of getting the bath ready. She'd swept the area around the entranceway and cleaned the toilet, too. Now she didn't do any of that and seemed to be avoiding me. She'd always gone out twice a week to her lessons in note chanting and folk songs, but now she left the house practically every day. I had no idea where she went. Sometimes she'd buy herself some food to eat alone in her room. When I went to tell her dinner was ready, she'd say,
I've already had mine, so I don't want anything.
And wouldn't come out. or even open the door. There were days when she even neglected to cut out newspaper clippings for my husband. Only when he reminded her did she finally start looking through the paper. It looked as if it might start pouring any time that day, so I was planning to ignore my husband's demands and ride my bike to the Taisei supermarket. As there were more cash registers there, I'd be able to pay and leave quickly. 5 packs of tissue boxes were on sale, and I was planning to buy a bag of rice as well, which meant the basket in front and the carrier in back would both be full. In response to my husband's, "Shoo!" I told him, "I have lots to buy today, so I'll be riding my bicycle." Normally, that would have been enough to quiet him, but today, he insisted on going.
Shoo! Shoo!
I realized then that he hadn't been outside for a whole week. "I understand," I said, "but please just wait one more day. I promise we'll go out tomorrow."
"No, today,"
was his reply. I looked at him stunned. He had a grim, positively nasty look on his face, his forehead creased with vertical wrinkles. I changed plans, opting for the neighborhood supermarket. With him along, all I'd be able to buy was long green onions, sesame seeds, and kitchen detergent. The entrance to that supermarket was crowded with trays of vegetables on sale, with stray, torn-off leaves, sheets of newspaper and wrapping paper, and cardboard boxes scattered around. A stream of water from the fish shop next door kept it wet and dark even when it wasn't raining. I bought ginger and garlic, even though we still had some. My husband didn't like smelly things like that. I put them in a plastic shopping bag that hung down next to his box. A supermarket isn't a very interesting place, so why come, I thought. All he could see were stacks of cans, bottles of vegetable oil, bags of snacks, and vegetables rushing by. And on the way home, he'd be choking on the smell of ginger and garlic. I wanted him to see things that way. I got through the checkout line and was coming out the narrow entrance when someone ran straight into me. Though I swerved to avoid him, it was too late, and I ended up slipping, falling off the bike. My plastic shopping bags went flying. Flustered, the young man who'd run into me apologized and helped me pick the things up. The box had fallen over, so I stood it up and looked inside. Being heavy, it had fallen at my feet, so I thought there wouldn't be much damage, but my husband was limp, lying on the bottom with his legs in the air. "Anata, daijoubu desu ka?" I asked him if he was all right and got no answer. When I picked up the box, he slipped right through the bottom. Had the bottom fallen out when the man ran into me? He was still standing there, so I turned to him and said, "Something terrible has happened. Please call an ambulance." At the hospital, they laid my husband on a gurney. They were pretty quick about that, but then things seemed to stop there. No one came to treat him. Though completely unconscious, he was having spasms. Finally, a doctor and nurse came to look at him. The doctor lifted his shirt and felt his stomach, then pulled back his eyelids.
"He looks like an old man, but he's actually quite young,"
the doctor said to the nurse, who replied,
Yes. He's much younger than he looks."
Why were they talking about his age? Why didn't they hurry up and do something for him? I thought, getting more and more irritated. About half an hour later, they wheeled him into a back room and told me to wait in the corridor outside. Looking out the small window, I saw that it was raining. The corridor was long and dimly lit, and it seemed as if my husband would never come out. I discovered a public telephone tucked away in a corner. I'd have to phone my mother-in-law. She'd been out when we left, but she was probably back by now. "It was all my fault," I said. "I fell down in front of the supermarket, the one near us. That's right, after I was through the checkout line and was starting for home. We're at the hospital now, but he's still unconscious. I started to cry and couldn't say any more.
You shouldn't have taken him outside. I knew something like this would happen.
She didn't sound surprised or particularly angry either.
He isn't dead, is he? Where did he hurt himself?
I don't know. He isn't bleeding, but I think he may have hit his head.
He'll be fine then. This happens all the time. I've just started making fig jam, so I can't get away just now. Besides, there are preparations I have to make, but I'll be along as soon as I can.
Then she hung up. There was nothing to do but wait. 1 hour seemed like 10. 2 more emergency patients were brought in while I was waiting, and a gust of damp, cold air came in with them. There was a family waiting on the bench next to me, a couple in their 30s with a baby. They didn't talk at all, so I had no idea who they were waiting for. Did they have an older child who was sick, or had one of the parents who lived with them suddenly taken ill? Now and then, I heard a baby crying behind the heavy door. Each time, the couple stared in that direction. The baby the wife was holding was tiny, probably under 6 months. Did they have one more? Twins, perhaps? I felt off balance. My husband seemed about to die any minute, yet my mother-in-law talked as if there was nothing to worry about. Irritation and tears collected in my eyes, then sort of vaguely melted away, and things went back to normal. I felt my neck sinking into my torso. Suddenly, my mother-in-law was standing in front of me.
Relax. Everything's going to be fine.
She said cheerfully, placing the bag she was carrying on the bench with a thud.
Where's the stuff you bought at the supermarket? You did the shopping, didn't you?
My mouth must have fallen open. I'd forgotten all about that. I'd probably gotten into the ambulance with just my handbag.
Well, don't worry about it. Where is he? I have to give him his milk before it gets cold. He's crying, isn't he? He always does.
My mother-in-law opened the heavy door to the back room and marched right in. My husband was still lying on the gurney he'd been brought in on. Nobody else was around. The doctors and nurses must have all been in the operating room farther back. I heard footsteps back and forth and voices.
Yeah! Yeah!
My husband cried, so loudly it surprised me. This was the voice I'd heard while I was waiting on the bench.
Ooh, there. Shh. Ooh. Shh. There.
My mother-in-law said, as she took a baby bottle out of the furoshiki and brought it to his lips. As he sucked on the nipple, he looked at me out of the corner of his eye. That, at least, was normal. He'd always tended to look at me sideways rather than head-on. "You're all right. I'm so relieved," I said, sinking down to a crouch, clinging to my husband. "I was afraid you might die." As my tension eased, the tears came gushing out. "I'm so sorry. We'll go for a walk every day from now on. I'll do whatever you say, so please forgive me." I was weeping the whole time. My husband let go of the nipple and said,
Boo, boo, boo.
I couldn't tell whether or not he meant that as a reply.
You listen here.
My mother-in-law scolded.
You should never have taken him outside in the first place.
She took out a swaddling blanket, wrapped my husband in it, and picked him up.
He won't understand anything you say for a while now. This is chronic with him. He gets this way now and then. I'm going to take him home now, but I'll let you out on the way so you can buy formula and diapers. We'll need lots of them.
She was energized.
We're going to be really busy from now on,
she said as we walked to the taxi stand in front of the hospital. She was small and very thin, though carrying a baby who was much too big for her, so she didn't exactly sweep briskly along. The hem of the blanket dragged on the ground as she staggered under his weight. From then on, my husband slept in my mother-in-law's room. There were night feedings, she said, and he cried several times during the night. She changed his diapers and gave him his bath. When I protested, "I'll do it. He's my husband," she snorted with laughter.
He needs his mother. You're totally useless. Just tend to the housework as you've always done.
Though it seemed that my husband was merely sleeping in a different room, the change went much deeper. Before, we had talked to each other and occasionally argued. His subtle movements had told me everything, and he'd understood me completely too. I had been happy, wrapped in the existence of my tiny husband. But where was he now? Not here. I wanted him back. When I searched for even a fragment of his former self, I found only a baby crying. When he wasn't crying, he gave me sidelong looks, showing the whites of his eyes, staring at me as if I were some strange creature. The color returned to my mother-in-law's cheeks, making her look much younger. I fixed soft baby food, washed diapers, boiled water. At night, I heard lullabies from my mother-in-law's room.
Nen nen korori yo okorori yo boya wa yoi ko da nen ne shi na boya no omori wa doko e itta ano yama koete saoto e itta sato no miya.
Buddhist hymns, perhaps. Or maybe she was talking to herself rhythmically. As my husband spent the whole day in her room, I only caught glimpses of him when I had an excuse to go in there. Toward the end of summer, I couldn't stand it anymore. What will become of him? I asked my mother-in-law. Is he going to stay this way? He needed to get some sun now and then, so she was letting him play on the veranda outside the living room. The veins in the fish mint plants had turned brown, and the wind whipped up the porcelain berry vines clinging to the torn net over the bamboo fence. Due to a typhoon that had just missed us, the wind was strong that day. How long will it take for him to get over this? I asked. Do these spells happen often?
Let's see,
she replied.
This is the third or fourth time, I guess. It usually passes eventually, but how long is hard to tell. Could be a week or 6 months. It may take years. This time it seems kind of serious. Maybe we should go back to Bakinu. He might get better faster there. If the head of the Weird clan examines him, He may know what to do.
Let's go then. Let's leave tomorrow. I want to do everything I can for him.
My mother-in-law gave me a funny look. The wrinkles around her nose looked just like my husband's.
You can't come. After all, you're just a servant.
I am not. I'm not the maid. I'm his wife.
Someone as big as you are? His wife? Makes me laugh. Me and everybody else, too. Where did you get that idea? If they hear about this in Bakinu, there'll be hell to pay. Don't tell me you thought you were married to him all this time. Incredible. Ha!
Well, I
was much too shocked to say anything. We were husband and wife. I knew it. Was she joking? You know I'm your wife, I said silently to my husband. Please tell her, say something. My mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I felt something pulling at my knees. The baby had crawled over to me and was clutching my skirt in his hand. When my mother-in-law saw that, she took hold of his legs and tried to pull him back toward her, but he wouldn't let go. Moaning, he clung to my skirt with all his strength. His drool was seeping into my knees.
Boo! Boo!
He said. I realized that this meant...
Wait a little longer.
And suddenly, I felt perfectly calm.
I don't need to go to Bakinu, I said, because it won't be long now. Until then, I'll take care of him. I'll cure him. You can think of me as a servant or whatever you want. My husband doesn't agree.
He was still clinging to my knees. My mother-in-law stared vaguely out into the garden.
You should weed the place once in a while.
She said.
After the lizard tails wilt, pick them and steep them for tea. They say lizard tail tea makes a good sedative.
My mother-in-law was sitting flat on her bottom. I peered into her face and saw that her features seemed to have gathered toward the middle and that the tip of her nose was dark. The gray hair that grew in clumps behind her ears hung down to her chin. The two long, curved front teeth that protruded from her half-open mouth were just like my husband's.
Husband in a Box. Hako no Otto was written by Tomoko Yoshida and was translated by Margaret Mitsutani. It was adapted, directed, and executive produced by Camilo Garzón. Husband in a Box was included in Unusual Fragments, a collection of Japanese short stories published by Two Lines Press. Our cast included
Amanda B. June
as the story's narrator, Yasuko,
Sakura Suki Jimenez
as GIRI-no-HAHA, mother-in-law, and Kangofu, nurse,
Eugene Nomura
as Otto, husband, and e-SHA, doctor. Our crew included Laura Wate and Camilo Garzón did voice direction. Laura Villa was our production intern. Yumi Araki and Maru Lombardo did consulting production. Maria Linares created the score, including an interpretation of Mozart's The Magic Flute. Additional koto was by Sakura Suki Jimenez. Daniel Murcia did the sound design, engineering, and mixing. It was produced by Cuentero Productions under their client-facing banner, Cuentero Transeunte Productions. Two Lines Press is an imprint of the Center for the Art of Translation, a non-profit organization based in San Francisco, California. O kiki tadaite domo arigatou gozaimashita. Thanks for listening. Gracias por escuchar.